How's it, everybody, and welcome back into the Paper Plane Inn. I am Mikota Nui, and thank you guys for actually coming by here for today's live reading stream. Joining with me today is Mikota Nui, alongside with my long friend Sherman Zia Tank.
Hello.
All right. Let's see. Where are you? Oh, oh no. Okay. There we go. Okay, the setting is still there. There we go, fixed it. I'm doing okay, I'm doing good. I hope you guys are actually ready because we are going to be finally finishing off where we last left off back a week ago. And, as you guys have been noticing for the the thing that's been going on for this Halloween month, we have been going through a bit of a detour from when it comes to cringe fiction, as we're going to be as we are in the middle of reading an actually good fan fiction, if you will, at least in my standards. Well, and this one we are in the middle of trying to read and finish up Silent Ponyville, which we finished doing earlier back in the first week, and now we are finally going to read and finish up Silent Ponyville 2, where our protagonist was Fluttershy as she tries to go through the nightmarish monsters that stems to a trauma that she has buried deep in her mind. Oh, hey there, Bearwolf. Hi, welcome back into the inn. I hope you guys are actually prepared because this is not for the faint of heart. We are finally going deep into the answer part of the art of the story, and I will tell you this right now. I'm just gonna put a content warning right then and there that we are stepping into much darker, personal, and, well, deeply traumatic, if you will. That sometimes it might be hitting too close to home. And I will warn you ahead of time that we are dealing with well, domestic horror, if you will, into the trauma that befalls in Fluttershy's story, at least in the Silent Ponyville verse. Now, that is my content warning from then and there. We are going to be reading things that is not for the faint of heart. We are reading things that is very disturbing, that is not appropriate for the younger or faint of heart readers. So, listeners' discretion is advised. I hope you guys are prepared. What about you, Dave? Dave?
Yeah, sorry, just give me 1 second. My internet is deciding to be South African at the moment.
Oh no, that's not good.
Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can still hear you.
Give me 1 moment.
So take your time as much as you can. Also, hey there, superstar M64. How are you doing? But yes, I think maybe I'll just try to continue where I can. Where I can. I hope you don't mind that. Do you, Dave?
Go ahead. I think, hopefully.
Oh, there he goes. Well, I guess we'll just carry on. Okay, I will tell you this right now. For those who are not very fond when it comes to domestic horror or domestic abuse and all that junk, it's okay that you can leave right then and there because this is not for the faint of heart. I will tell you this right now. Ah! Cedric! Now's not a good time! But, okay. Alright. I guess we should start continuing where we can with Silent Ponyville, Chapter 7. Just heed my warning that I mentioned earlier. This is not for the faint of heart. Chapter 7. The heat finally got to her. Once she had cried what she felt like she could cry, she slowly moved out of the burning room. Her only path was to exit out of the door she had come in through. She pushed open the surprisingly cool door, walked through, the door closing shut behind her. The cool air stuck her coat, causing her whole body to feel a bit of relaxation as her temperature cooled. She wiped her face, sniffing as she continued to try and regain her composure. Dash's words still have a strong grip to her heart. I can't stop now. Fluttershy gulped back more tears from spilling. I have to move forward. She slowly looked into the room at the end of the hallway, expecting to see the pacing nurse. However, the room wasn't the same one that she had come from. The room before her was a small, square room with a staircase going up before her. Fluttershy blinked at the sight, but the twisting, heart-warping rooms had become something she was accustomed to by now. She stepped across the room, quickly reaching to the staircase. She slowly began her climb upwards, feeling a sense of déjà vu upon the climb. Her hooves were nearly slipped on the slick steps as a stench of mildew hit her nose once more. Water dripped down the walls as she felt a sense of dread. Suddenly, as she reached the top of the stairwell, she knew where she was. She was back in the cloud home that she had entered when she was first separated from her friends. Only, it wasn't a random cloud house anymore. It was her home when she was a filly. The room that she had just entered was her mother's room when she was young. The same bed that she sat next to in the window so she could look out at the bookshelf that contained the books she'd read in her bed, the bedside table that held her belongings, a desk and a chair, the bathroom just a short walk away. Everything she needed for her living room while sick. Fluttershy had drawn toward the bed. A force felt like it was guiding her, telling her to go near it. Her mind felt a haze flew past it. As she stepped back, she saw blood flash before her eyes on the bed, on the carpet, as if her mind was trying to reject the images. But there would be no stopping them. Her head began to ache with pain, but she couldn't stop the memories. Her attention was drawn to the bed, as the memories that she had lost came back full force, making her to remember what happened in the room so long ago. Mother? Philly Fluttershy called out, walking into her mother's room. Her mother sat up on the bed, a knife in her hoof, as if she was playing with it. Her hair was messy, unkempt, and uncared for. Bags were under her bloodshot eyes, as she seemed to be glaring at the knife, as if unhappy with it. Mother, Fluttershy whimpered, walking further into the room. What would you like to eat? Her mother suddenly burst out laughing. Fluttershy halted her movements forward, looking up at her mother in shock. The older mare just seemed to have found something funny. Oh, yes, that'll do nicely. The older mare smiled once she had finished laughing, turning her head to grin at her daughter. Fluttershy couldn't move, afraid of what her mother was about to do. Come here, my daughter, her mother said, twisting her body closer to the edge of the bed. Fluttershy began to hesitantly move closer to the bed. I said, close! Fluttershy's mom began to yell, but suddenly fell from the bed, hitting the ground with a thud. Mother! Fluttershy cried out as she ran to her mother's side, trying to ensure her she was okay. Her mother groaned, but slowly rolled over onto the other side so that she was facing her daughter. Once she could see her face, a wicked smile crawled onto it. My dearest daughter, oh, how you came just at the right time. You see, I finally figured it out. I finally figured out a way how to cure myself. Her mother gave another short laugh.
Really? Oh, Mother, that's good news. I have to go tell Father.
No, you cannot tell your father yet, her mother hissed.
Why not?
Fluttershy asked, confused. Because only you can administer the treatment right now. Her mother laughed, carefully holding up the knife up to Fluttershy. And you'll need this to cure me. Fluttershy gingerly took the knife in her hooves, staring at it confused. I'll do it. I do it myself, but I'm far too weak to administer the treatment properly. But you, oh, you can do it just fine. Her mother laughed. And you want me to be cured, right? Cured and happy?
Of course I do, but what do I...
Fluttershy began to ask in confusion, but her mother seemed to be ready to answer. That's simple, my child. You take the knife, and you strike with me with it. Her mother smiled. Fluttershy froze. That didn't sound right at all. She knew that something as sharp as a knife will hurt you when you graze its edge. Why would she be striking her mother to cure her illness? Why would striking her mother cure her illness?
Mother, that...
Are you questioning me? Her mother glared. Fluttershy's skin jumped at the glare.
No, but...
That sounds like you're questioning me, her mother growled. If she could move with any decent strength, she would smack her daughter. I need you to do this for me. Only you can do it right now. You love me, right? That pulled onto Fluttershy's heart.
Of course I do, Mother.
Then
This is fucked.
Yep. I did warn you. I did warn the readers ahead of time that this is not gonna be good. This is anywhere good. I warned the readers.
And with that, I'm gone. I don't need this at work. Not for today.
Okay, honey.
It's good to see you. It's good to see you're good, honey.
All right.
Love you.
Love you too.
Cheers, Steve.
See you, Shem.
Okay, where was I? Ah, that pulled onto Fluttershy's heart.
Of course I do, Mother.
Then strike me, her mother demanded. Fluttershy took a gulp as she shakily raised the knife up over her head. She didn't want to bring it down. Her mind was telling her that doing this was wrong. The knife hovered in the air, unable to strike it down. Fluttershy, her mother spoke quietly, coldly.
Yes?
You said you loved me, but you haven't struck me with a knife yet. So you lied to me.
No, I do.
Then strike me, her mother yelled at her, making Fluttershy almost jump. Strike me! Love me! You're going to love me! Her mother's head snapped
Hey,
up
reference.
her mother's head snapped off from the ground. Her mouth opened as if she was trying to bite down Fluttershy. The knife sailed through the air, embedded itself onto her mother's side. Her mother's eyes went wide for a moment before a wicked grin returned. Yes, Yes, do it again! She demanded with a yell. Fluttershy pulled up the knife out and slammed it back into her mother. Don't stop! Were the last words Fluttershy heard from her mother. The knife rose and sank down with the body before her, into the body before her. Again and again. Each strike sent blood flying. Her fur was being coated, and her mane was drenched. Each strike sounded a deafening, yet it was one of the quietest sounds in the world. It was as if the very knife was screaming at her. Only she could hear the screams of the blade. She plunged the knife in one last time. She panted, cried. She shook. Her mother wasn't moving anymore. She wasn't speaking. She wasn't breathing. And she wasn't warm anymore. Fluttershy didn't know what this meant. Had she cured her mother like she had asked? Had she put through her a lot of pain? Was she going to be all right? Fluttershy, have you gotten any answer from your mother yet? Her father walked into the room. Fluttershy slowly turned, tears streaming down her face, still holding onto the knife. Blood covered in her mother's blood, sitting before the corpse of her mother. The air was silent. Then her father drew closer.
Father,
Fluttershy hiccuped, trying to say something, anything to explain the sight before her. However, she was silenced. Her father's hoof struck her hard. Her small body was sent sailing across the room, smashed into the wall. She let out a yelp of pain before hitting the ground. Her father picked up her mother's head in his hoof, and he began to cry. Okay. Chat, are you doing okay? Is everyone else doing okay?
I am surviving.
Okay, that's good.
You don't need to hydrate or anything, do you?
I think I might. I think I might need to hydrate so that way I can continue.
Yeah, probably wise. You'd be surprised how important hydration is for mental health.
Uh-huh. Okay. I'm going to continue. It's only going to get darker from here. Tears streamed down her face.
I killed my mother.
Fluttershy whimpered.
I killed.
She cried. She couldn't believe that what she had done it. She couldn't believe she had done it. But she had done it. All because her mother had yelled at her. Because she had been too weak to disobey her mother. Fluttershy felt her stomach twist. She felt like she was going to be sick. She turned and ran into the bathroom, wanting to escape the room for even a moment. However, her brain assaulted her once more, a vision of memories forgotten appearing before her once more. There was silence as her father scrubbed away at her coat, washing away the blood that had begun to cake onto her fur. The hot water had managed to get most of it away, but some of it was being stubborn. He was being hard with the brush, harder than he had ever been before. Fluttershy didn't speak up, though. She couldn't speak up against it. Her heart felt like it was in a million pieces. Do you know what you have done? Her father finally asked. Fluttershy whimpered in her response. She couldn't say any words. You took your mother from us, her father said, as if his breathing was becoming more ragged. The brush stopped its cleaning. You took the most wonderful mare I've ever known. Out of this world. He gripped the brush harder. He started to speak through her gritted teeth. You did it so quickly, too. I sent you in to help her. And you killed her! Fluttershy's eyes burned with tears. Her father's words made her stinging worse. Her heart sting worse. You're a monster! He growled. Without a warning, he pushed her head down under the water. Fluttershy scrambled at an unexpected movement, her mouth and nose filling with the water as if air escaped her lungs. Her hooves flailed as she tried to push herself out of the water, but the hoof holding her down was too strong. The air escaped her quickly as lungs began to burn. She reached for air, but it couldn't come. Suddenly, she was lifted up into the air. Instinctively, she took a big gasp of air, only for her head to be shoved back under the water. She lost all the air almost instantly again. Her whole body began to feel like it was burning from the movements. This repeated several times, getting a short breath of air only to make it painfully taken away by the water once more. Her struggling has lessened, and now she was too weak to push against the water, too tired to try to get air. The hoof was holding her under the water for good now. Her eyes began to roll back under her head as her limbs stopped moving. She couldn't stay awake any longer. She was pulled out of the water. Her body gasped and took in a fresh breath before coughing up water that had filled her lungs. She puked slightly as her body tried to reject the water that had attacked her body. No, just killing you would be too easy, her father growled, watching her sputter and gasp for breath. You need to understand the misery you've caused with your love. Her father let go of her mane, Fluttershy instinctively catching herself on the edge of the bathtub, still recovering as her father walked out. Fluttershy shook as she stared at the bathroom. Her father had tried to kill her. He could have killed her, but he didn't. Though she had felt like she deserved it at the moment, she had killed her mother in cold blood. Death sounded exactly like what she had deserved. She backed out of the bathroom slowly. She didn't want to be in that room anymore. She turned to the door to the hallway and quickly exited. She panted heavily outside of the mother's room as tears refused to stop. She slowly hobbled forward, making it difficult to see, even seeing where she was going. She reached a hoof up, touching what felt like a door. Without thinking, she pushed it open, stepping inside. So, you've sewn it back together, huh? Her father said, looking up at the sloppy sewing her daughter had done with her favorite doll.
Yes, sir.
Fluttershy replied meekly, lowering her head as her father held it. He wasn't impressed at all. All the stitches were visible. The stuffing was still hanging out of the spots not sewn close enough, as the fibers easily would come loose if tugged on. Unacceptable, he said, before grabbing the doll and tearing it apart. Fluttershy snapped her head up in shock as she watched. He torn apart all the seams and stitches. She had worked so hard at making the doll into one piece again after he torn it up the first time. Soon the doll lay in pieces of cloth and stuffing before her again. If you love it, I shall destroy it, he said sternly. Then it is your job to put it back together. And if you can't do it perfectly, then you don't deserve it at all, he said as he walked over his bookshelf. Fluttershy whimpered as she began to pick up the pieces of her favorite, most beloved doll, her doll Ashley. A book slammed into itself before her, making Fluttershy almost jump, but she read the title carefully, The Mastery of Sewing. If you don't want to see your doll destroyed, you will make it look perfect, her father said before returning to his desk, going back to his work. Once she had all the pieces of her doll, Fluttershy carefully picked up the book with her mouth, carefully not to stain it with her tears, as she quickly left her father's study. Is everyone doing okay, chat? Because
This is some hardcore shit. You weren't kidding.
I did warn you. Hold on a second. I need to blow my nose real quick. Hold on.
You did warn me, indeed. You good?
Alright. Yes, it is far from the canon Fluttershy. But I did tell you I did say that this fanfic was written this is written post season 1 of My Little Pony. So, things that is like, Discord, Starlight Glimmer, and everything else that is post season 1. This is not, everything after season 1 does not exist in this one, okay?
I mean, I would certainly hope that the main canon isn't like this, because, yeah, holy shit.
No, the main canon, Fluttershy's actual canon father is much more, just like her daughter. I'll bet his design is a little bit questionable, but I'm not the one who made the show. But yes, I'm gonna be okay. It's just that my nose has been very sniffly, and I'm trying my best to hold it together. Okay. Now, where were we? Ah, right. Fluttershy whimpered. She was in her father's study. She had wandered in there by accident, but now she had seen it more than what she had forgotten. She swallowed back more tears as she began to calm herself down. Her mind began to put things together.
I wanted to see this.
She breathed heavily, reminding herself that she had chosen to come here, that she had told herself that there was no turning back now.
I have to see every memory for my sake.
She took a deep breath as she wiped her face from her tears before pushing back onto the door of her father's study, exiting it. She stumbled out of the study a little, finding the kitchen that lay just the opposite side of it. She steadied herself before walking into the kitchen. The haze returned as another memory surfaced. What do you think you're doing? Her father yelled loudly. Fluttershy dropped the box of cereal that she had picked up from the top shelf of the counter. Her wings snapped shut at her sides as she fell a few feet before landing onto the ground with a thud. Her father was furious as he stormed up to her. Fluttershy began to back away out of fear. He grabbed her hoof and forced her to eye level with him. What have I told you about flying without permission? You're not allowed to do it even in the house! He yelled at her, gripping her hoof hard.
I'm sorry.
She cried out as tears streamed from her eyes. Her hoof hurt like crazy as he gripped it hard. I told you before. Bad fillies who don't listen to what they're told get eaten by dragons. Do you want to get eaten by a dragon?
No!
Fluttershy cried out, struggling against the grip. Well, you're attracting a dragon by flying as a bad filly. You want to be eaten by a dragon. Why else would you be flying without permission? His screams made her ears feel like they wanted to burst.
No, I don't want to be eaten by a dragon. I'm sorry.
Well, you know what? I think I can hear a dragon. He's already pretty close because you've flown. Maybe I should have thrown you outside so he could eat you right now. he hissed and growled.
No, Daddy, please! I don't want to be eaten!
Fluttershy wailed, afraid of her life. Well, if you don't want to be eaten, there's only one thing I can do, he said, tossing his daughter to the ground, the wind escaping her body as she tried to scramble to her feet, only to have her father's hoof step on her, holding her down. His mouth reached down, gripping down hard onto her wing, forcibly extending it all the way forcibly extending it despite all of her efforts to shut it.
No, Daddy, please stop!
She cried out in pain. Shot through her back, but it was too late. He wasn't going to stop. Fluttershy cried louder as she had ever heard before, as her father snapped her wing. There! Now you won't be able to fly for a while, and you won't attract any dragons, he simply said, stepping out of his wailing daughter. I snapped it carefully, so you won't be able to fly once it's healed. But we'll have to get you to the hospital to put a cast on it, he said, though a grin formed in his face. Though, only once the dragon has left. Fluttershy could barely heard her father's words past her own screams of agony from the burning pain that echoed from her wing. Is everyone okay, chat? Is everyone alright? Are we all alive?
Ouch.
You okay, Dave?
Ah! Phantom
Yeah.
8! Why?
Of course you will walk it. Hello, Phantom A. You're late, but I will tell you this right now for those who arrive late. I should warn you that this fanfic is not for the faint of heart as we reach to the answer arc of Fluttershy's story. And we are dealing with layers of domestic abuse that is going on. That is the trauma that consists of Fluttershy's, the source of Fluttershy's nightmares and the monsters that symbolized it. I will tell you this right now that this is not for the faint of heart. So don't be afraid to leave if it's too much for you. I'm perfectly okay with that.
Yeah, definitely worth paying heed to the trigger warning if this is something that's affected you.
I did lay out a content warning right there and there, and okay. Alright, is everyone ready?
I am.
Alright. Fluttershy gulped down more tears, trying to hold herself back from crying. She slowly backed out of the kitchen.
My father, he was cruel.
She whimpered softly to herself.
I can't believe that I made myself forget all this. It's all painful to remember.
She shut her eyes, another tear escaping despite trying to force herself not to cry. She struggled with her hooves to make herself continue forward. Past the kitchen was the living room. She could see the front door from there. She knew that what was where she needed to head. Her instincts told her so. However, the living room held one more memory that she had to see. The haze returned as the memory came to her once more. Where did you get that? Her father asked as Fluttershy walked through the door, carrying a candy bar in her mouth.
Oh, a colt at school gave it to me,
she said quietly.
He said that he liked me and wanted me to have it,
she said, gently chewing on the end of the bar, savoring the sweet taste. Oh, He did he? Her father said, walking up to Fluttershy. Fluttershy looked up to her father, taking a step back from him getting so close. Fluttershy fell to the ground as her father's hoofs hit her hard across the face. The candy bar slid across the room. Well, let me tell you something about boys loving you. He growled, grabbing Fluttershy by the mane, picking her up, eliciting yelps of pain from the Philip. Colts will only hurt you. They only think of themselves, as they want nothing more than to see you suffer. He grinned wickedly. After all, look at me. I love you. And here I am, hurting you, he said, before tossing his daughter across the room, her landing hard against the floor. Fluttershy cried as she tried to curl up into a ball, not wanting to be hurt anymore. But I suppose you must really like being hurt, if you're going to let a colt like you. Her father grinned, walking up to his daughter, kicking her in the back, causing her to cry out in pain. Any colt that gets close to you will do nothing but hurt you. So I hope you enjoy this for the rest of your life. I'm sure you'll find a colt who loves you even more than I do. Her father laughed before walking off to his study. Fluttershy whimpered and cried when she curled up, remembering the colt from school who had given her the candy bar. Suddenly, her mind filled with anger, hate for the colt who had given her the candy bar. All he wanted to do was hurt her. He wanted to get close to her so that he could make her cry and suffer, just like her father did.
I hate colts.
Fluttershy whimpered loudly. She vowed to herself that she would never like a colt, or let a colt like her, for as long as she lived. Another lump came to Fluttershy's throat.
My father, he made me hate colts.
She thought to herself.
But I don't hate them.
She knew better now. Not all colts were like her father. Not all of them would hurt her just because she got close to them. But she still had never had any interest in being with a colt. The only pony she had fallen in love with was Rainbow Dash.
Do I love Rainbow Dash for her? Or because she was the only pony who got close to me that didn't hurt me?
Fluttershy found herself confused by her own feelings now. Everything she had believed had turned her upside down in a single moment. It felt like she had just been lying to herself all this time, and that everything she had done might have been a mistake.
No,
She suddenly said firmly to herself.
because of Rainbow Dash, I came to Ponyville. I escaped from my father. I met the best friends I've ever had. Friends who cared about me more than anything else. I fell in love and had a wonderful relationship.
She said, looking up at the ceilings, as thoughts of her friends came to mind. She remembered so many wonderful moments together with her friends, picking flowers, going to parties, playing games, sleepovers, tea parties, hanging out, and venturing. She had done so much with her life now, even though she had forgotten about her foalhood because it was painful. It hadn't stopped her from moving on with her life, from experiencing all the wonders life had to offer. If anything, because of her father pushed her away, she found her way into the embrace of ponies that truly loved her. She took a deep breath as she calmed down. A small smile formed on her face.
Yes, even though all of this had happened, I still have my friends,
she said, a warmth sparking inside of her heart. It gave her legs strength. She walked down the living room onto the front door of the house. She could see the lock on the door, the lock with the symbol of a doll in it. She carefully reached into the bag and pulled out the key with the doll symbol. The key she had picked up a while ago and still had it. She carefully placed the key into the lock, the door letting out a click to let her know it had worked. She carefully pushed the door open and walked through. On the other side was a large open room, almost like a small gymnasium. She walked for... Hello, Morris. What are you doing over
Hey.
there?
Just chilling around.
Okay. She walked forward to the middle of the room. Then she stopped. A black fire was burning on the opposite side of the court. The fire slowly grew, rising up into the shape of the pony, before red eyes appeared on its face, a white mouth opening. It was the dark creature. Fluttershy stared at the creature. She didn't feel a heavy, overbearing presence this time. The creature was still drawing fear from her heart, but it wasn't overwhelming her now. She could stand before this creature. The creature slowly turned itself around, showing its back to Fluttershy. Fluttershy looked at the creature curiously, not sure what it was doing. Then, as it turned around, she could see that hanging from its mouth was the body of Rainbow Dash. Fluttershy let out a gasp as the creature flicked its head, tossing the body towards Fluttershy. It landed right before her, hitting the ground with a thud. Fluttershy reached out a hoof and gently nudged the body. It was cold. Rainbow Dash was dead, killed by the creature before her. Fluttershy stared at the body for a long time, the creature watching her, grinning as it waited. Fluttershy moved her hoof away from the body, a sad look appearing on her face. She turned her head upwards to look at the dark creature.
Father,
She spoke softly.
I understand now.
She made sure she spoke clearly.
I've done a horrible thing, and it's likely I can never be forgiven for what I've done. I can't bring the dead back to life, and the blood of my mother is on my hooves.
Fluttershy closed her eye for a moment, taking a deep breath before she continued.
I probably deserve all the punishments I received. No fool should ever do what I did. Though it may have been tough living with what I did and received the punishments for my deed. I lived with everything.
She smiled softly.
And I've grown up to have a wonderful life now. I've left behind all the things that made me sad, that hurt me, that made me miserable living at home. I have wonderful friends, animals that depend on me, and a home I can take care of myself. I found love that didn't hurt me.
She smiled softly. Fluttershy carefully stepped over the body before her, walking up closer to the dark creature. The smile of the creature faded as it looked down for her, as if not amused. Fluttershy came to stand just inches before him, looking up at him, smiling.
You brought me a lot of pain to me, but I forgive you.
She leaned in and nuzzled the chest of the dark creature. The creature let out a roar.
I forgive you for everything, and I thank you. Thank you for letting me find a wonderful life.
An orb of white light appeared in the air above the two, floating down towards Fluttershy. The dark creature roared in pain as the light gently flowed past him, reaching to Fluttershy's chest. The light engulfed her body, filling her with a pleasant warmth. The bandages that covered her body began to unfurl. Each bandage was pulled away from her body, pulling around as if she recovered. Her wings extended out. She stood on all of her legs. She opened both her eyes and looked up at the roaring dark creature, which seemed to be fading away as the light shined. The very existence of the creature seemed to be fading away, burning up the bright light that surrounded her. The last bits of darkness that made up the dark creature disappeared as the light began to slowly fade. Fluttershy smiled softly as she looked down, seeing on her chest, in the place of the lantern, was now the golden necklace with a pink butterfly-shaped jewel. For a moment, her necklace glowed once more. A beam of light shot out, creating a doorway of light before her. Fluttershy looked down to the door of light, knowing what it was.
So, this is my way home now,
She said, looking at the door. Once she had passed through the archway of the light, she could leave this world. She could go back to Ponyville. She'd be able to take everything she had learned and live a better life than she had before.
I can't leave this just yet.
She smiled at the doorway, before turning around and running away from the light.
I have 2 friends who are lost and needed my help.
Okay. How's everyone so far? Let me see in chat. You really want to turn this punk into glue? I can't say I blame you, Phantome. I don't. Hey there, Dogman Arts. How are you doing? Well, it may be not spooky right now, but that's because we have gone past the really hard to read parts of the story. And if you had arrived late, then I think you can count your blessings. But if you want to play back into this stream, fair warning, the beginning of the stream is not for the faint of heart, as it tackles on domestic abuse, domestic horror, and horrific childhood trauma, if you will. I mean, it was the source of Fluttershy's nightmares that consist of her own Silent Hill, but the point still kind of stands. But how's everyone so far? Is everyone doing okay?
Yeah.
Glad I'm past the worst of that, hopefully.
I came late, so hey.
Okay. Let me try to continue where I left off then. Pinkie Pie laid on the ground, panting in pain and exhaustion.
You've been running away oh so well. You're very good at it.
The other Pinkie smiled, walking towards Pinkie.
You killed me 3 times, and yet here I am again. You really mustn't want me to be You must be really
Okay, I'm sorry, chat.
You must really want to be part of my own parties.
The other Pinkie laughed. Pinkie could only sob. This other Pinkie wanted to kill. She couldn't stop her. What was the point of trying to stop her? She let Fluttershy get separated twice now. She was probably dead with how injured she had been. And Rainbow Dash hated her. What was the point of trying to stop her other self from killing, when she was just as guilty of it herself?
I'm sorry, Philomena.
Pinkie sobbed, closing her eyes.
Oh well, I guess I'll just have to take my time playing with you.
The other Pinkie smiled, picking up her butcher's knife as she drew closer.
Now just hold it right there for 1 moment.
Came a motherly demand. Pinkie and the other Pinkie snapped their heads to the doorway to the room they were in. There stood a yellow Pegasus pony with long pink hair, wearing a golden necklace.
Hasn't your mother ever told you it's not nice to hurt other ponies?
Fluttershy stomped across the room towards the other Pinky. The normal Pinky was just staring with her mouth agape.
Well, yeah, but I'm not really hurting them. I'm just playing with them.
The other Pinky laughed, putting down her butcher's knife to talk to Fluttershy.
That is not how you play nice with other ponies.
Fluttershy stood right up to her other Pinky, looking her straight in the eye.
You are seriously going to hurt my friend. You don't use knives or sharp objects when you play. You play with nice games, like pin the tail of the pony, or bobbing for apples. You should know better than this. But no buts. You should be ashamed of yourself. I have half a mind to tell your mother the kind of games you've been playing with other ponies.
The other Pinky seemed to be shrinking back under the scolding of Fluttershy.
Now, you're going to take your little things and get rid of them. And I never want to catch you doing this again. You got that?
The other Pinky could only nervously nod her head rapidly before picking up her butcher's knife and turning, running away from Fluttershy.
That's good. That's a good, second Pinky.
Fluttershy smiled happily, seeing the other Pinky run off. Before turning to Pinky, who was staring in shock at Fluttershy.
How was that? I was so assertive.
Fluttershy softly chuckled as she felt a happy shiver go down her back. Pinky stared. It took a long time for her to even register what was going on. But once it dawned on her that Fluttershy had just scared away her other self, a smile formed on her face. It quickly began to grow before a sound escaped her lips. Pinky began to laugh again. She laughed hard, rolling over onto her back as her hooves flailed in the air. Fluttershy had scared away the very thing that scared her to the core, and
Right,
she had done it
back a
just.
bit.
Okay.
Hmm.
She laughed hard, rolling over onto the back of her hooves and rolling back. Sorry, chat. She laughed hard, rolling over onto her back as her hooves flailed in the air. Fluttershy had scared away the very thing that had scared her to her core, and she had done it by just being Fluttershy. Pinky couldn't help but laugh as her hair poofed out into its usual curls. It was one of the funniest things she had ever seen.
Thank you.
Fluttershy said, smiling, giving a small bow to Pinky, accepting the laughing as a compliment.
Oh, Fluttershy!
Pinky laughed, finally rolling back into her hooves, rushing up and hugging her friend dearly.
You're all better! And you saved me!
Pinky laughed joyously.
Hey, what are friends for?
Fluttershy grinned, returning the hug.
Oh, speaking of friends, have you seen Rainbow Dash?
Pinky said, looking at Fluttershy with concern.
Don't worry, I found you first, but we're not leaving till we find her.
Fluttershy smiled.
Right! Operation Locate Dashy is a go!
Pinky smiled happily, saluting Fluttershy. Alright, before we continue, I need to redeem the hydrate. So I'm going to go and do that. And there's twice the hydrate, so that's twice the sips. So give me a moment.
All right.
One. Two. Okay. You good over there, Phantom Me? I mean, you did say, you did seem a little bit shook when it comes to the other Okay. Yep. You're okay. Yeah. Okay. All right. Let me go and do my stretch real quick. Thank you, though, for that.
Oh,
felt my back popped a little bit, but that felt great.
Oh.
Okay. Alright, well, let's continue.
It really is for the best.
A cold voice said. Yeah, it's what I've always wanted after all. Rainbow Dash tilted her head, closing her eyes as she agreed.
I'm glad to see you've been able to follow your true heart then.
The voice laughed. Rainbow Dash opened her eyes to look at the pony that stood before her. She looked like one of those shadow bolts, the flying team that she had seen in the Everfree Forest the day that she had taken down Nightmare Moon. It's what I've always done. No point in changing that now, Rainbow said, looking around. The two of them were sitting in the middle of the burning building, the fire staying just far enough away to not burn them. Good. Then just take my hoof. Everything will be made better, and everything will be made clear, the Shadowbolt said, holding out her hoof to Rainbow Dash. Rainbow Dash looked at the hoof hesitantly. It didn't feel good. It didn't feel like the right thing to do, but she felt it was the only thing she could do anymore. She slowly raised her hoof, reaching out carefully and take the Shadowbolt's hoof. Dashy! Came an instantly cheerful voice, and suddenly Rainbow Dash was suddenly tackled from behind, flattening her against the ground. The Shadowbolt gasped loudly. What the? Hey! Pinkie Pie? Rainbow shouted, annoyed, still embraced by the pink mare.
Oh my gosh, I thought I'd lost you. After you ran off, I was so worried I'd try to find you in Fluttershy. Only I started running into the monsters I ran into before. Man, I was so depressed because of what you said, and I couldn't help but start to relieve the nightmare here. But that's okay now, and 'cause I forgive you, and now I found you again.
Pinkie cried out happily at once. Yeah, that's great, Pinkie, but you're crushing me! Rainbow groaned as she tried to sit up, Pinkie finally sliding off her.
Oopsie, I forgot about that.
And what are you doing here? I told you we were supposed to find Fluttershy! Rainbow Dash stopped at herself, and her eyes went wide. Fluttershy! Oh my gosh, I totally forgot! Rainbow said, looking around rapidly. What am I doing here? I have to find Fluttershy!
It's okay, Dash. I'm already here.
Fluttershy smiled happily, walking to the burning room. From the hallway the Pinkie had just ran into in a blinding speed. Fluttershy! You're okay! Rainbow said, galloping over and hugging Fluttershy. What was I thinking? You were right in front of me not too long ago, and I completely forgot I had to protect you! Fluttershy laughed, hugging Rainbow Dash in the back.
It's okay, Dash. This place does weird things to a pony.
Hey! The Shadowbolt yelled, standing up, glaring at the three mares before her. All three turned their heads to look at the Shadowbolt. What about your dreams? You won't accomplish them if you don't come with me, she growled. Rainbow Dash looked at the Fluttershy. Fluttershy smiled back at her, before Dash grinned and turned to look at the Shadowbolt. Tell you what, keep it for now. I'll find a way to achieve my dream on my own. The Shadowbolt yelled, before turning into a puff of black smoke, disappearing into the burning building. And don't come back! Pinkie yelled happily, waving at the puff of black smoke. Fluttershy, I'm so sorry, Rainbow said again. I shouldn't have let this place get to my head and forget about protecting you. Dash then turned into Pinkie, who was smiling at Dash. And Pinkie, I'm sorry I yelled at you. That wasn't right of me that wasn't right of me when you're only trying to help.
That's okay, Dashy. I forgive you,
Pinkie said, giving Rainbow another hug.
let's focus on getting out of here. I can handle that.
Fluttershy smiled happily. She turned herself towards the hallway and stood proudly. Her golden necklace began to softly glow before releasing a beam of light that shot out before them. A doorway of light formed, their exit home. The necklace around Fluttershy's neck, having served its purpose, turned back into an orb of light, floating up into the air before disappearing.
All right, let's go home.
Pinkie smiled happily.
Yeah, I'm getting tired of this place.
Dash grinned.
All of us are.
Fluttershy smiled. The three mares walked through the door of light together. All right, to be concluded into one of the endings. How's everyone so far? Is everyone doing okay?
Yeah.
All right. Normally we would actually use this opportunity to read more of the endings before we reach to the canon ending, but would you actually want me to read some of the endings, or shall we continue into the canon ending, if you will?
I'm down for the canon ending.
Okay. That's one vote for the canon ending. What about you guys? Good ending too? Okay. All right. We'll go for the good ending. Okay, we'll go for the canon ending. Okay. All right, before I forget, let me have a little bit of a swig. Okay. Twilight was doing her best to understand what the three pictures were before her meant. Each picture was a disordered mess of colors of Each picture was a disordered mess of color and shapes. At times she thought she had been able to make out a vague shape of a pony or some shape that she could identify as an object, but it quickly moved back into a distorted blob.
I can't make heads or tails with this.
Twilight groaned as she looked back and forth.
How exactly does this spell work? This is my second time and I'm still confused.
The book didn't explain any further than how to perform the spell and its purpose. Was it supposed to be easy to figure out? Should it be something that should have been obvious to her? There were no instructions on how to interpret the pictures, or what she could do to help. It seemed like she was purposely being kept out, as if she wasn't allowed to see what each of her friends were experiencing.
If I had something to write with, I could make better note. I could make.
I'm sorry, chat. My performance is not all there. Okay.
If I had something to write with, I could make better notes. But I have nothing to compare this to. I only have the other two pictures. Ugh! I can't learn like this.
Twilight groaned, sitting as she stared as a little frustrated at the pictures. She wanted nothing more to do than figure out and learn so she could help her friends better. Without a frame of reference, it seems pointless. Just as she was getting frustrated, each of the pictures began to radiate with a bright white light. Twilight tried to look into this development, but the light became too much for her to bear. She covered her eyes, just as she felt a familiar tug of the spell's ending. She was dragged backwards, out of spiraling darkness that carried the three paintings, before finding herself thrust back into reality. Twilight groaned as she rubbed her forehead. It was an unsettling feeling of being pulled about like that.
Every pony okay?
She asked, opening her eyes and looked at the three friends.
Yay! It worked! We're back!
Pinky said excitedly, jumping up, smiling happily as she looked around.
Take that, you creepy world!
Rainbow Dash grinned.
That was really eye-opening.
Fluttershy smiled softly, putting a hoof under her chin in thought. So, the spell worked? You were able to figure out why you were having the nightmares, Fluttershy? Twilight asked, looking at her friends curiously. Fluttershy felt herself become the center of attention as every mare looked at her in anticipation. She blushed softly.
Yes, I found the reason,
Fluttershy admitted slowly.
Well, don't leave us in suspense. What was it?
Rainbow asked, eager to find out.
Whoa, hold on, Dashy.
Pinky said, stepping closer.
If it's anything like me, finding out I lost my sister, we shouldn't force her to say it until if she isn't ready. Though, I admit, I am really curious to what it was. It's probably something hug-worthy. Oh,
Fluttershy rubbed her legs awkwardly with her hoof.
Well,
Fluttershy stumbled in thought.
Tell you what, there's something I need to do. Something I need to take care of. Then, oh goodness! Hi, John. Welcome into the Paper Plane Inn. Thank you for following me.
As you can tell, we're in the middle of doing a live reading of Silent Ponyville 2, and we're reaching to the ending of the story. So, feel free to stick around and listen to how this story goes. Okay, where was I?
To tell you what, there's something I need to do. Something I need to take care of. Then I can tell you all, I hope.
She said the last part quietly.
And that's something completely understandable,
Pinky said, embracing Fluttershy into a big hug.
Just know that whatever it is, we're always here for you.
Yeah, sorry. I didn't mean to sound pushy. Tell us when you're ready. Rainbow Dash smiled supportly.
Thank you, all of you.
Fluttershy said, smiling, with tears at the edge of her eyes.
I don't know what I'd do without you girls.
She embraced Pinkie Pie back.
Well, I'm glad I could help.
Twilight smiled.
Yeah, about that,
Pinkie said, letting go of Fluttershy and looking at the other two.
I think we're all in agreement here, Pinkie.
Rainbow said, nodding at Pinkie.
Yes, I do think we are.
Fluttershy nodded as well.
Twilight,
Pinkie started.
Huh?
The three mares before her each took a deep breath before, in one big cry, they unanimously shouted, "Don't ever use that spell again!" Okay. So, why are we going to Cloudsdale? Rainbow Dash asked curiously, looking at Fluttershy as the two of them were flying towards the city of clouds.
Well, I guess I can tell you,
Fluttershy said before letting out a soft sigh and smiling.
I'm going to see my father.
Your father? Rainbow asked curiously.
I don't think I've ever met him.
Heck, you haven't told me much about your family. You've always avoided the subject when I asked.
That makes sense,
Fluttershy said softly. Oh, welcome back, Morris. What are you doing over there?
Just chatting with the artist.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Okay, hold on a second.
My keyboard is really that loud, is it?
It can
Yes,
be.
yes, it is.
Yeah, it can be.
Yeah.
Okay,
that makes sense.
Fluttershy said softly. Does This has something to do with that freaky nightmare version of Ponyville? Rainbow asked hesitantly, the gears turning in her head as she thought.
It does.
Fluttershy said softly, trying not to alarm Dash. She wasn't ready to say too much about what she saw. Not until she had at least confronted her father. Rainbow looked at Fluttershy as they flew quietly, waiting for her to say more, though she realized it wasn't coming. Rainbow let out a soft sigh. You are going to explain things, right? Pinky didn't explain anything more than she lost her sister to some serial killer. She didn't mention the monsters in the town. I really wanted to know what happened to you, Fluttershy. After you got separated from us, I was so worried, Rainbow said, feeling guilty about having to yell at Pinkie Pie.
I promise, Dash. I'll tell you everything.
Fluttershy looked down sadly.
Just promise me you won't think I'm a monster.
Rainbow looked shocked, as if she was almost offended at the idea. How could I ever think of that? You're the nicest, kindest, most gentle pony in all of Ponyville. Heck, maybe in all of Equestria. How can I think of you're a monster? Rainbow shook her head, confused.
Thank you, Dash.
Fluttershy held back her tear from spilling.
We're almost there.
Ow! Hey! Spinel, that's not a good time! Dude!
You got pillowed.
Okay, where was I? Fluttershy said they were now flying close to the Cloud City. Cloudsday was busy with its normal buzz of Pegasi ponies all around. Some were working on new construction, some were delivering packages, others were simply enjoying the weather while others seemed to be in a hurry. It was a normal day for Cloudsdale. Fluttershy looked at the schoolhouse in the distance as they flew past it. She could hear the familiar bell ringing from as the schoolhouse suddenly poured out into exciting young foals that were eager to be out of school for the day and go off to play. It brought a smile to Fluttershy. Seeing all the happy faces of youth seemed to lift her spirits.
There it is, the place my father works. Cloudsdale General.
Fluttershy said, as a few more minutes of flying, pointing to the large white building with a large red cross on it. It had several Pegasi flying in and out of the building, some healthy, some sick, some with bandages on their limbs. There was an emergency vehicle that sat parked next to it, but would be pulled by a team of Pegasi should an emergency call be made. Is your father a doctor? Rainbow Dash asked as they settled down outside of the front doors before walking inside.
You could say that,
Fluttershy said, smiling softly. The lobby was large, very large. There was a huge open space above their heads for Pegasi to fly around. A large fountain in the middle of that seemed to be having a few bits floating in its depths. A receptionist desk that had lots of ponies checking in. A waiting area for ponies to fill out paperwork, waiting for them to head out where they needed. The most noticeable part of the room was a very large picture of the receptionist desk of a light amber Pegasus with a dark red mane, with a white lab coat with imposing blue eyes. Underneath the picture was a plaque, though it was difficult to read from afar. Well, that's a large photo, Rainbow said, chuckling at the size of it. They must really like that doctor.
Well, he has saved hundreds of ponies' lives. He's the best doctor in the whole hospital.
Fluttershy stopped when she was walking, making Dash stop as she looked back at her curiously.
His name is Lance Strongshy, and he's my father.
Rainbow's mouth hung agape before looking quickly at the picture, then back at Fluttershy, doing this several times in disbelief. You mean your father is the Lance Strongshine? Oh my gosh. He's the most famous doctor in all of Cloudsdale. Even I've heard of him. It was said that there was a terrible lightning storm broke loose in all the weather center and it injured at least 30 ponies. That Lance was able to save all of them. And when all the other doctors couldn't be able to save them.
Yes, I'm familiar with that day.
Fluttershy said, nodding slowly. All of her memories of her foalhood had returned now. She could remember almost everything.
He's always been one of the best doctors.
Wait, no. He's always been one of the best doctors. I've heard that he's only been better when he poured his passion into studying medicine after his wife died of a disease. Rainbow Dash stopped in her tracks as the realization hit her like a ton of bricks. She was speaking about Fluttershy's mom. Oh, Fluttershy, I had no idea.
It's okay, Dash.
Fluttershy said with a sad smile as she walked past Dash, heading for the counter.
There's a lot I have to tell you. You'll understand soon.
Welcome to Cloudsdale Hello, welcome to Cloudsdale General. How can I help? The nurse behind the desk began to say, having the nose deep into paperwork, before looking up in shock, seeing Fluttershy standing there.
Hello, Nurse Softcure. Covering for the receptionist today.
Fluttershy offered a genuine smile, as she could, looking at the white-coated Pegasus with a blonde mane. After all, it was the first time she had seen her personal full-hood nurse since she had last visited the hospital so many years ago. Nurse Softcure narrowed her eyes immediately, giving Fluttershy a rather nasty glare. What are you doing here? The nurse almost hissed. Rainbow Dash raised an eyebrow at the nurse's behavior. This seemed very rude, considering she was talking to the daughter of the best doctor in the hospital.
I've come to see my father today. If he's not busy, that is.
Fluttershy explained simply. The nurse's hooves banged hard against the desk. Almost every pony turned their heads to look at this, not having expected a loud bang in the middle of the hospital. Nurse Softcure looked around quickly before offering a weak smile and a soft laugh, as if it had been an accident. The other Pegasi just seemed to shrug it before continuing their other duties. Once she was sure no pony was paying full attention to them, she went back to glaring at Fluttershy. So what? After all these years, you come waltzing in here, not expecting an audience, but expecting me to believe that that's all you're here for? Softcure was trying to yell, but her voice came out as a harsh whisper. Hey, do you know who you're talking to? Rainbow Dash said, feeling her fur standing on the back of end, but she was stopped by a hoof put out by Fluttershy.
I swear to you, Miss Cure, I'm only here to talk with my father.
Fluttershy smiled. Fluttershy smiled in her face of the hate that was coming from the nurse. Oh yeah, like I believe that. Softcure growled. You're here to smear Lance's good name, aren't you? Trying to interfere with his life-saving work because of some bitter vengeance you want? Again, Rainbow Dash went to speak. Hey, Phantomate, no.
Hello.
Oh, it's meant for the nurse? Like, dude, I'm cool.
I was about to say, this nurse reminds me of a certain college teacher I've heard about.
Alright. Okay, where was I? Again, Rainbow Dash went up to speak, but was stopped by Fluttershy.
You can accompany me if you want. I really want nothing more than a chance to talk to my father. I won't say a word to any pony else, I promise.
Fluttershy explained calmly. Nurse Softcure just glared at Fluttershy, but seemed to be thinking the situation over her head. Her eyes wandered over to Rainbow Dash, who seemed to be giving her glaring daggers back. It took a while, but the nurse finally responded. Fine. I'll escort you to his office. The nurse got up from her sitting position behind the desk before spreading her wings. She began to fly down to the hallways, towards the air past the upper levels. Yeesh, what's her problem? Dash growled as the two of them were followed after the nurse.
It's a long story. I'll tell you later.
Fluttershy smiled softly. Rainbow Dash didn't seem to please, but listened to Fluttershy as they flew. The nurse directed them to several stories, before stopping at the 9th. She flew down the long hallway that barely had a soul in it. They only had passed a single other Pegasi as they drew closer. Here, his office. Softcure stopped outside of one of the doors, turning to face the two mares. I'll let him know you're here to see him, she explained before knocking onto the door. Come in, came a gruff voice. Nurse Softcure opened the door and walked in before closing the door behind her. I don't like the feel of this, Fluttershy, Rainbow whispered in displeasure with the situation. Something doesn't feel right.
I understand, Dash. I promise this will be over soon. Just let me talk to my father in private for now, please. Yeah, if I need you, you'll know.
Fluttershy said, nuzzling against Rainbow Dash for support. I'd rather go in there with you, but if you say so, Rainbow said, softly nuzzling her back. The door opened once more, Nurse Softcure coming out. He'll see you now, she said, standing next to the door, glaring at the two of them.
Thank you.
Fluttershy smiled softly before walking up to the door. She took in a deep breath to draw in strength, before carefully opening the door and walking inside. The office wasn't too different from the last time she'd seen it. There was still the desk, with books lining in the walls, many of the books stacked on top of each other around the office, as if recently read. One book laid open on the desk while it was currently in the middle of being read. There, behind the desk, looking up at her with tired eyes, was the familiar amber coat and dark red mane of her father. He looked up at her, almost as if in disbelief that she was actually there, standing before him after all of these years.
Hello, Father. It's me, Fluttershy.
Fluttershy said as nicely as she could. So you're finally here. Lance let out a soft sigh, coming out from behind the desk and walking around to get a better look at her. You've certainly grown a lot since I last saw you. He looked her up and down, scanning her. You resemble your mother so much now. Her father turned his head away from her, closing his eyes. Why are you here?
I came to talk.
Fluttershy spoke softly.
About what happened to us.
What's there to say? You killed your mother, and I hurt you for it. You killed your mother, and I hurt you because of it. He said the words coldly, as if he didn't care to say them, let alone think them. You remember all that, don't you? So what's there to say?
I guess I came to apologize.
Fluttershy smiled a soft, sad smile. Apologize? Her father said, looking almost confused as he turned to his daughter.
I'm sorry I killed Mom.
Fluttershy lowered her head softly.
I can never take back what I've done, and no amount of apologies will bring her back. But I did kill her, so I'm sorry.
There was silence in the room. Fluttershy could feel the cold stare of her father as she looked at her, as if he was trying to figure out what was going on. Are you trying to seek redemption now? He finally spoke up in a cold voice. Trying to make up for what you did so long ago. After all of these years, you came back for this. Anger was starting to rise in the back of his voice.
I guess that's not all.
Fluttershy admitted, lifting her head up and smiling.
I also came to let you know that I forgive you as well.
This seemed to stop the older stallion where he stood.
You punished me for what I did to Mother, and I still feel that it was a worthy punishment. I did a terrible thing, so it was only befitting that I had a fitting punishment. And I don't hold any anger for what you did to me. In fact, I was able to find a wonderful life to what you did. I have so many friends who love me so much now. I can take care of animals in Ponyville, you know. I put the knowledge I learned from your medical books to use.
Fluttershy smiled happily as she thought back on her life in Ponyville.
Right.
I was even able to find love in Ponyville. I don't know where it's going to head, but it's a journey I'm going to enjoy all the way. And I wouldn't have met my love if you haven't done what you've did. I owe everything in my life to you, Father, and I want to thank you.
Fluttershy gave a small bow.
Thank you for everything.
Lance just stared at his daughter. He could still remember the night his wife had taken from him, the monster that had ended his wife's life. He remembered how much pain and suffering that had inflicted on that monster, how much that he put so much work into studying medicine and practicing his craft so that he could save any pony regardless of condition or disease. But now that monster was bowing before him, thanking him for everything that happened to her in her life, apologizing for taking the mare that had brought him the greatest amount of happiness he had ever known. He grit his teeth as he felt anger swelling inside of him. He stared at her with maddening intent. He saw her slowly lift her head to look at him with a smile. That smile, it felt like it was digging into his very soul. He took a step forward as he took a deep breath out of his nose, raising his hoof into the air. He wanted to strike her. He wanted to make her hurt more. He wanted her to know that what happened still tore his soul, and that he looked into the face of every patient he had saved. Fluttershy smiled softly, looking at her father. She closed her eyes, ready to be struck. She would take any punishment she seemed befitting for her that she had always had. It was the only thing that she could do to make amends for their past, for having taken her mother out of his world. She waited for the blow, expecting to come. But the strike never came. Instead, what Fluttershy felt next surprised her. Her father gently placed his hoof down to her back, drawing her close to embrace her, wrapping his hooves around her. She blinked in surprise. She felt him start to shake. She wasn't sure how to react. When she suddenly felt something cool and wet hit her back. He was crying. Her father was crying as he embraced her. Fluttershy couldn't help herself. She moved her hooves around her father and hugged him, closing her eyes as she let him cry into her as he needed. The two of them just stood there in that embrace for what seemed like an eternity, when her father finally broke away from it, rubbing his face when he turned away from his daughter. "Fluttershy," he finally said after clearing his throat.
Yes.
She asked curiously. "I think it's better we never see each other again," he muttered quietly. "Please, don't ever come visit me again."
All right. I understand.
Fluttershy slowly nodded her head.
Just know that I love you, Dad.
"I know. I love you too." He choked out. "Now, get out of my office." Fluttershy didn't need to be told twice. She gave one last bow before moving to his door and opening, heading out. "Well, that was a quick visit," Softgear said, looking at Fluttershy curiously. Fluttershy emergence was the only thing that stopped the constant glare battle between Softgear and Rainbow Dash.
Yes, but don't worry, Miss Kier. You won't ever be seeing me again.
"What? Really? You're not going to smear his name?" the nurse said, surprised.
Miss Kier, I understand now. You did what you did because you didn't want anything bad to happen to my father. If something had happened, he couldn't save all the lives he had saved over the last few years.
Fluttershy smiled, but Softgear just turned her head, almost as if she was being stabbed by Fluttershy's words.
I don't blame you. He saved so many lives. The one he hurt seems insignificant in comparison.
"Get on with it."
I'm sorry. I just need to say it.
Fluttershy smiled.
Please have a wonderful life and look after my father.
Fluttershy gave a bow before walking off. "Fluttershy," Rainbow Dash spoke up after a while. "What the hey was that all about?"
I guess I can explain to you now, Dash.
Fluttershy smiled happily.
But let's go somewhere more private first.
How's everyone with that so far? That was a bit of an intense closure.
Yeah, no kidding. I have to say, it feels like she's still victim blaming herself a bit. Like I guess that she basically committed murder, manslaughter, depending on how you view child liability, but I don't know if forgiving her father for what her father did in response was the right thing.
Everyone ready to see how this story goes?
Yeah.
You're probably asking, and what did you, let me look at chat. Wait, how did she... It was nerve-wracking. Yes, it can be, Danny Lockhart. Wait. It was child labor. Not really, Phantom 8. No. I know that you arrived late into this fanfic reading, and I don't say I blame you since you got preoccupied. But in case if you did miss out, what Fluttershy did to her mother, her mother actually forced Fluttershy to actually kill her, not knowing, but like in the means of telling her to take the knife and strike it at her as a means to administer the way to cure her illness. At that point, Fluttershy didn't know that, well, her mother is that long gone.
Yeah,
And-
pretty much. Child acting under duress, not understanding the consequences of their actions.
Well, let's continue and finish where we left off now, shall we?
Yes.
Rainbow and Fluttershy landed at the top of a hill in the middle of a large field that expanded far into the horizon. One could see the mountains in the distance and the flowers blooming in the field below. It was a beautiful sight, one that was tranquil, without another pony around to be seen.
This seems like a good place.
Fluttershy smiled as she laid herself down, turning to look over to the nearby forest.
You know, over there is where I fell from Cloudsdale and learned my special talent on taking care of animals.
She gave a soft chuckle. Huh? It is, isn't it? Rainbow Dash sat down next to Fluttershy, looking into the forest. The sight did bring back fond memories, but that's not what she was concerned about at the moment. Okay, Fluttershy, will you tell me now that we're alone? That nurse was glaring daggers at you, and I didn't like it one bit. And what did you do? And what did you see in that other Ponyville that warranted a trip to Cloudsdale? Rainbow Dash quickly asked, wanting answers. Fluttershy could only offer Fluttershy could only offer a sad smile as she felt the wind blowing through her mane. She closed her eyes as she began to speak.
I suppose you know that my mother died of a disease, right?
Fluttershy asked, just wanting to double check what Rainbow knew. Yeah, I was too young to remember, but it was a big news one day. And of course, every time I heard ponies talking about him, they always mentioned how he tragically lost his wife, and it made him want to become an even better doctor. Rainbow explained slowly.
Well, then there's the truth, Rainbow Dash. My mother didn't die of a disease.
Rainbow looked at her curiously.
It's true that she was sick with a disease to which we had no cure, and it would have killed her eventually. But that's not what killed her. For, you see, I killed her. I killed my own mother, Rainbow Dash.
Rainbow Dash's mouth fell open once more as she stared at Fluttershy. Fluttershy wasn't even looking at her. She was just staring out into the field with a soft, sad smile. Any question or doubt that ran through her head was hit by that sad look. She wasn't lying. Fluttershy had actually done what she had said. But why? Why would you? Rainbow stuttered, trying to process it. What would drive you, the kindest pony ever, to kill your mother?
She asked me to,
Fluttershy replied softly. What? Rainbow said in a shock once more. You mean your mother asked her young daughter to kill her? Fluttershy just slowly nodded her head. Fluttershy, that doesn't make you the killer here. Rainbow stomped her hoof. You were too young to know the difference. If she had made you kill her, then you had the ability to stop yourself. You didn't kill your mother. She killed...
But I did kill her, Fluttershy.
But I did kill her, Rainbow Dash. Fluttershy closed her eyes softly.
Even if she had told me to, as a child, I had to listen to her. I still had enough sense in me to know what I was doing was wrong, and that it didn't feel right. But I chose to not want to disappoint my own mother. I took the knife she gave me and I stabbed her repeatedly. No matter how much you look at it, the motives or the reasons, my mother died because I stabbed her multiple times. If I had the knife, if I hadn't moved my legs in the stabbing motion, if I hadn't listened to her, then she'd still be alive today.
Fluttershy's smile stayed on her face. That sad smile that she was forcing herself to be okay with everything she said.
I'm simply a monster, Rainbow Dash.
No! Rainbow shouted, stomping the ground before grabbing Fluttershy by the shoulders. Much to her surprise, and turning to the sad-looking Pegasus to her face. You're not a monster! Your mother forced you to do that, Fluttershy! As the most gentle pony of all Equestria, you're not capable of murder unless you didn't know what you were doing! You're not a monster! Rainbow breathed heavily as she ranted. Fluttershy looked in shock before smiling gently. She was so happy that Rainbow cared for her so deeply, despite having admitted the monstrous truth to her. She could feel the tears burning at the edges of her eyes, but she held back as she closed her eyes.
Well, my father told me I was.
This seemed to shut Rainbow Dash up again as she stared at Fluttershy in shock.
He didn't just tell me I was a monster. He punished me as the monster I was. After all, you don't argue with the best doctor in all of Cloudsdale. He knows what's best for you. I don't have any scars because he knew what he was doing. I visited the hospital so often because of his punishments.
Fluttershy let out a small laugh. She apparently found that statement to be funny.
That's where Nurse Softcure comes in. She was my father's nurse. Whenever I came in from one of my accidents, she was the one who helped me. However, she was loyal to my father. If I tried to tell her that my father was the one who has been doing all this to me, she would only hurt me in return, forcing me to never speak of words that said to my father was a horrible person. And I understand why now. She was protecting the people my father was caring for. I remember passing by the rooms of his patients one day. All the time he was attending to a cancer patient who all the other doctors said they had no chance in healing her. But my father said he wasn't going to give up with her till the very end. Another patient needed a complicated organ replacement that other surgeons were too afraid to perform because one wrong move would kill her. But my father took it upon himself and saved her life.
Tears were beginning to flow down Fluttershy's cheeks as she spoke the deeds of her father had accomplished.
There was a little filly with a weakened immune system. She had given up on life and was dying when my father gave her hope that she hadn't had before. She made a full recovery. There was even a time he was able to help a mother who was going to kill her baby in labor. But he was there and he knew what to do. The baby came out healthy as could be.
Rainbow could say nothing. She was staring at the crying mare before she poured her heart out about her father.
These were all patients I had with my own eyes, I saw with my own eyes, Rainbow Dash. I saw him smile and laugh and help them all. Even after I killed my mother, he never once shown a sign of sorrow to them. So, what else can I be but a monster, Rainbow Dash? I deserve everything that happened to me. I did the unforgivable and killed my mother.
Fluttershy closed her eyes, giving a small laugh as her tears continued to stream down her face. No! No, 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 no! Rainbow Dash began to scream as she lowered her head. Fluttershy looked at her in surprise. Rainbow Dash began to shake as she felt tears burning burning at the edges of her eyes. Fluttershy, you're not a monster! Rainbow Dash looked straight into Fluttershy's water-filled cyan eyes. Even if it's true, even if you did kill your mother, that doesn't make you a monster. You could never hurt a fly unless you were given no other choice. No other option. Unless you were back and it was to the wall, you'd never do anything to harm another living being. So stop saying that you are. The tears ran down Rainbow Dash's cheeks unhindered now. Stop speaking like you're some horrible pony that deserves to be punished. When you're not. When you're the nicest, gentlest, kindest pony who's ever lived. Rainbow's shoulders shook as she spoke.
Rainbow Dash.
Fluttershy muttered quietly, looking at her through sorrowful eyes. The two of them sat on the grassy hill, looking at each other's eyes as they sat there crying. There were no words to be had at the moment, just the bond that was between the two mares set up. As the sun began to set on the horizon, between the two breathless mares, they shared a deep kiss on that hill. Each mare could feel the passion that was radiating from the other side of the kiss. It wasn't just a kiss out of longing or lust, or a simple understanding or care. It was a kiss of deep love, a kiss that was rooted in their hearts. The night sky began to become visible when the two finally broke apart their kiss. Fluttershy nestling herself into Rainbow's coat.
Thank you, Rainbow Dash.
Fluttershy said quietly. Rainbow Dash smiled at her mare friend, petting her coat softly. The two stayed that way for a short while. It was Fluttershy that broke the silence in between them.
We're not done yet, though.
Huh? Rainbow Dash asked curiously as Fluttershy sat up.
This time, we need to talk about you.
Fluttershy wiped her face as she smiled.
About your dream to be a Wonderbolt.
Oh. Rainbow Dash grimaced, not wanting to have brought up the topic just yet. She looked up at Fluttershy, who was smiling at her, then up to the sky, then down to the ground, and gritted her teeth as she closed her eyes before letting out a soft sigh. I'm not going to...
I want you to try out for the Wonderbolts.
Fluttershy smiled happily. Huh? Rainbow Dash blinked in confusion. But I told you before, if I join the Wonderbolts, I'll be abandoning my friends, the ponies I care about. Rainbow Dash felt like she was shrinking as she spoke. That I'd be abandoning you.
I've been thinking about it over despite my own thoughts. And there was 1 year of training, there was a 1 year training program, right? Well, as far as I know, they're not allowed to keep you away forever. By law, they must give you opportunities to rest, breaks from working. You get sick days, vacation days, rest days, holidays. And even once you're a part of the main flight team, they don't do shows during the winter. And not every team flies during every show. And that's all that downtime you'll have, you can use to spend with us. Rainbow Dash blinked. Huh. How do you know all this? Rainbow said, flabbergasted at Fluttershy's level of knowledge about the Wonderbolts. Fluttershy could only laugh. I've been listening about your rant about them since we're fillies, Rainbow Dash. I've been remembered most of what you said about them. I just took some important details from each rant and brought them together.
Fluttershy nodded softly.
Just because you'll be gone for a while at the time doesn't mean you'll be abandoning your home or your friends. And you especially won't be abandoning me.
I haven't thought about that. Rainbow said, thinking about thinking of it all over her head now. In that other Ponyville, it had been presented to her in such a black and white way that she couldn't help but feel like she was shown was true. But here, Fluttershy mixing that black and white line, causing it to be an ambiguous gray blur. You're right, Fluttershy. You're absolutely right, Rainbow Dash said as an enthusiastic grin came back into her face. Yes! She cried out, jumping into the air, doing a flip, pumping her hooves into the air. The dream is alive! I'm going to be a Wonderbolt! Rainbow Dash cheered.
That's wonderful, Dash.
Fluttershy laughed happily, watching Dash.
I've come up with my own dream too. One I want to make come true very soon.
Oh, what's your dream, Fluttershy? Rainbow Dash flew down to Fluttershy, smiling happily.
I've decided that I'm going to be a mother.
Rainbow Dash's wings stopped moving as she fell to the ground before Fluttershy. But what? I can't give you a child! Rainbow Dash cried out in a panic. Fluttershy couldn't help but laugh.
I meant I'd like to adopt like a filly or a colt of my own.
Fluttershy explained more clearly. Oh. Rainbow Dash sat up, understanding now. I don't know, Fluttershy. A foal is a lot of work. A lot more than trying to be a Wonderbolt is. Plus, with me being your mare friend, you know, I'd have to help take care of it. Rainbow rubbed her back of her head and thought, I don't know if I'm ready for that kind of responsibility.
It's okay, Dash. I wouldn't ask you to do anything you're not comfortable with.
Fluttershy smiled happily. You always have a way of twisting my heart. Rainbow puts a hoof in her face before smiling. But if a foal is what you want, then I can't do anything but say go for it. Just, let's consider our options first. Options? Fluttershy blinked, tilting her head a little. You know, we could... Rainbow Dash thought about what she was going to say. Well, I would say we could ask Twilight about, you know, pregnancy spells between two mares, but I was thinking but I think I want to avoid Twilight's spells for a little while. Rainbow grimaced. Fluttershy couldn't help but laugh at this as well.
It's all right, whether it's from you or from someone else. All I know is I want to give this little filly or colt a wonderful foalhood, one I didn't have growing up.
Fluttershy nuzzled up against Rainbow Dash. I know. Rainbow let out a soft chuckle as she embraced her mare friend. Hey, it's getting late. We should probably head back to Ponyville, Rainbow said as a cool breeze blew through her mane, reminding her of the time.
All right, let's go.
Fluttershy smiled at Rainbow. The two then soon took off from the hill, flying back to Ponyville together. And that's it. That's the end of Silent Ponyville 2. That's the end of Fluttershy's story.
Good boy.
How's everyone doing so far from that, chat? Is everyone doing okay?
I apologize for this, but it is approaching midnight, which means that I might be scheduled for a power blackout, so I do need to turn off, like, now.
Danny, no, Danny, don't, no, dude, no, go, bad, Danny Lockhart, bad.
I'll be back in a second.
Okay, unfortunately, I know Dave said that he'll be back for a while, but I think that we've been through a lot reading Silent Ponyville 2. And we finally reached it up to a point that we finished up the story. And I think it's a little bit appropriate that we finally, end the stream for here and there. Because we have managed to, oh, fuck. Hold on, I'm putting the closing stream right there and there. Okay. Please do not pay attention to the room. Alright. That was a good stream. That was a good story.
Yeah.
And I think that might be the only good thing we're gonna have for now. Ah!
You get pillowed at the end of the stream.
Okay. That's pretty much happening right inside of the inn. Like I could feel it from there. Okay, this might be the only This might be the only This might be our last good story for a while, because come by Saturday, and we're gonna be finally tackling. we're gonna. Oh God, it's okay now. It's okay, Nui. Compose yourself. Okay.
The big one.
Come by Saturday, where it's gonna be my birthday stream, where we're finally gonna tackle my immortal, the most infamous fanfic that has ever embraced the internet. Oh God, help me! I am not prepared. Sarah's light, help me! I am not prepared for this. But how about we just finally, let's see, who's on right now? Only Basil is on right now, so how about we go and do a little bit of a raid? No, why don't we?
Sounds good to me.
Stop! Okay. Alright, we are gonna be raiding a VTuber who's an artist, a shit poster, and, well, he's actually pretty fun in himself. And we'll finally go and start raiding for Basil Wolf. I think I should really start switching my streams into mature audiences, so that way people will actually know that some shit I go into is not for the faint of heart.
Would probably be advised.
I'll send in the raid message right there, so that way you guys would actually, in case if you guys don't have the icon right then and there, you can actually unlock it with your channel points. There you go. The raid message is sent there. I will see you guys until Saturday. Oh Lord, help me. We're gonna do my immortal reading, and I'll catch you guys next time. Take care.
Right.